This week on the Old School RuneScape Update, RuneFest is back after 5 years. From musical openings to trading cards, we share the RuneFest experience. Also, we set sail and describe our first hands-on experience with sailing. High-level content is back with The Blood Moon Rises and a new raid. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 67, recorded Saturday, March 1st, 2025. Charting the Know. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of RSVNB Update, or OSRS Update if you're listening to us on this one. We're doing this episode a bit differently, but more on that in a minute. Sirion is here.
Hey, hey, hey.
Fellow RuneFest attendee in person this time with me here.
I mean, I've been at RuneFest in person for the last few years.
You've been to it more than I have, and you know, a side of the world lends itself to that. But nonetheless, of course, just a general big huge thank you to all of our Patreon members. Since I don't have the list in front of me here, as I'm running with a bit of a limited recording setup, you'll get the full thanks next week when the podcast returns to its full and normal form. But in general, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the RuneFest experience at the convention that we've had here on day one, starting with the floor. Then we're going to go into the reveals for both RuneScape 3 and Old School, depending on which show you're listening to, through the magic of editing.
Yes.
The magic of editing. I say that.
Though, of course, all of you will go and watch to both of these.
Yeah, that's
and then
right.
watch through this first section twice, which is good for our retention numbers, right?
And you know, as we like to say, if you're joining us for the first time, be sure to, of course, subscribe to the podcast and all your favorite podcast listening services out there: Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, and more. Also YouTube as well, youtube.com/RSPNB and /OSRS update on the Old School side. But with that being said, let's just dive in, because it's been quite a day. I think we're pushing on 12 hours here as we're just ending.
I mean, speak for yourself. I've been awake for longer than that.
Well, me too. I woke up at 4 a.m.
Yeah. Whoa. Well, yeah. Well, jet lag will do that too. But no, I think like about 12 hours ago, just looking at the time, we were just about queuing up doing the Mexican wave inside the convention center,
which I'd love to get everybody to do, and I'm sure you'll see that on some video going forward. The event held in Birmingham this year, and I guess that's a good place to start. How does this feel compared to Farnborough and London ones?
It's definitely more. The location is a little bit of an enigma to me. It's definitely it's a convention center. We were right next door to the National Wedding Convention
and the Equine Convention.
And exactly, which was right next.
Which we won't talk about the ads that have been running on the billboards here.
Oh yeah, they have definitely been doing some targeted advertisements towards vets on the
and animals, and that you can kind of
yes
put that together about where that is.
Yeah, exactly
about it.
But no, all in all, it's been pretty good. It's a bigger venue. I think I've heard through the grapevine that it's been upscaled about
by a
third
from the last one.
Yeah, exactly. And they did a good job. It didn't necessarily feel bigger and empty what happened the first time when they went to Farnborough. Like, the entire venue felt very empty, with a lot of empty space, and I think they did a lot better this time.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective to have, and I think you brought that up before, because that was my first one.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, that felt normal to me in that regard.
Yeah,
thought it was fine. But I agree on the good use of space with this. Also, the 3,000 tickets had sold out.
Yeah, exactly. I do think in general, like, if you look at previous years, you know, there's always like these videos of like the queue on like streams and like summary videos where people are excitedly doing like the wave and talking. I felt the queue energy was very low this time around.
Yeah,
like there were a few Mexican waves, but
we were in a much bigger atrium than they would have had before that.
Yeah, at least
So
it was inside and not outside that we had to wait this time around.
yeah.
All in all, it was pretty good. We got in nice and early. I think they opened the venue a little bit earlier.
And the first thing that was apparent to me with that is there's this energy amongst the J mods on hand for this, because this was their first RuneFest back since 2019.
Yes, and for a lot of J mods, probably their first ever
Yeah,
RuneFest
exactly.
to begin with.
Exactly. And you could just tell that this was going to be a major event for them, a major boost for
Yeah.
how they see the community, just in terms of the energy that brought when they were welcoming everybody in through a long walk from the
Oh yeah, that was like
and it was like a snake walk from the start of the hall to where we sat down for the first.
I mean, we got merch first. I mean, maybe we should talk about
Yeah,
the amazing goodie bag we got, which has been.
It's not a goodie bag.
It's absolutely top tier.
It is a legitimate backpack, magnetic snaps, and with that,
it has a laptop sleeve of all things.
I haven't looked that deep into it yet, so that's neat. Also with that, I think it's a leather bound RuneFest notebook as well that was in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely gorgeous piece. Like I don't want to I'm not
Nope.
writing in my
No,
past RuneFest books, but this one like absolutely want to keep and save.
Yeah, exactly. And with that as well, we got the starting points for the skill chip activities that we'll talk about in a little bit. With that, what else was in there that was interesting with that? Because it was the skill chip stuff.
Of course, there was the paper craft what we had to
Paper
do.
craft,
Not that much. I want to say. I feel like I'm missing or like a pen or like a thing. No, it was not a lot of content to it. No rubber duck this year. Big disappointment. Like this is one.
Which explained to the folks why that's a disappointment.
So there's a tradition that at every RuneFest there would be like a themed rubber duck, and I have my own collection at home. I have a dinosaur rubber duck, I have a Viking rubber duck, and I have a dragon rubber duck.
And you know, taken out of context, that's gonna be a very interesting clip.
Yeah. Oh boy. I forgot I'm on the RS3 show as well now, so there's going to be clips out of this. Yeah, no, I have. I love my rubber ducks. There you go. Just clip material. We're going to be clip farming on TikTok with this, right?
Oh no.
But yeah, no, great bag. Oh, what was in there was trading cards.
Yes. Which I want to get to that because that falls into the skill chips, but I want to talk about two things first. With that is that they had a musical open that was a surprise to everybody.
Yeah, even the J-mods we talked about did not know that this was going to happen. Apparently, even internally, they had kept this.
So what we had was a mini introduction of RuneScape music set to electric guitar.
Yeah,
at the start,
pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and the guy who came in very clearly professional involved in that. I think he said his name was Cole Roland.
Yeah, Cole Roland.
Yeah. But he was also joined on stage by somebody unsuspecting that we wouldn't have thought would have performed in this way at a RuneFest. He was joined by
the one and only legend.
The one and only legend, legendary, though probably now god tier, Odd Ash.
Yes.
On the violin.
Yes. No, absolutely amazing. I did listen back. Like, if you've seen this on stream, I did listen back to the sound mix, which doesn't do justice how well it sounded. I think it really, like, the audio levels worked a lot better in person, which,
yeah,
given my previous experience with musical performances at RuneFest, where the musical mix on the stream was probably better in both 2019 and 2018, this was actually... You know,
it was better in person compared to what you heard on the stream.
Exactly. And I also have to say, just hearing the Inferno soundtrack in your chest, because that's how loud it is from now on the only acceptable way to consume the Inferno sound.
Yeah, and I wonder with that, will this be released at some point?
So based on what I've seen, starting from Monday, this will be streaming on
Well, there you go.
online services.
So people will be able to hear it in its
yeah,
preferred
hopefully
format.
that is mixed in a little bit of a better way at that as well. But absolutely majestic, absolutely love that. Great surprise to
Yeah.
everyone.
And that just led into the energy of the RuneFest Open. You could tell everybody was so happy to be back there again. Mod Mark, Mod Jack, Mod Kieran on the OS side. And they, of course, with that, do have some interaction with the crowd. And the thing that floored me, they asked, how many people? Is this your first RuneFest? And I think literally everybody's hand around us went up.
I mean, just looking at the room, it felt it was like 80%. And honestly, it makes some sense, right? The number of attendees doubled since previous RuneFest. So you kind of would expect, like, on average to be like maybe half of them are indeed new, but it was definitely more than half, and it felt a little bit unique and actually.
So is Birmingham easier to get to, assuming somebody lives in the UK, and cheaper than London?
No, London is by far the easiest to get to. Mostly, like, if you look at sort of the train network, it's like a spider web with everything converging on London. Farnborough, of course, was quite a bad location to get to. I was talking with some people about that today. That both times that they did RuneFest in Farnborough, there were actually real construction works with no trains running to Farnborough and people having to use like real replacement buses.
Oh dear.
So in that sense, I do think that in terms of like how to get here, Birmingham is better than Farnborough. I think that's fair to say. It's a little bit further away from London, but it has its own airport right across that, especially from like European locations or like hub airports like Amsterdam, you can get to it easily, and the trains stop here as well. So
yeah, and then from there, the convention center is walking distance to that airport and
absolutely. I
station.
I have really no problem at all, and like there's plenty. Like in Farnborough, you could stay next to like in a hotel next to the convention center if you wanted to, but there's nothing around, like no restaurants, nothing to do. And here there's like what's called the Resort World with plenty of restaurants, which was filled with nerds last night.
Yeah, and see that's the entire thing. You would think that 3,000 people in such an area, and the people on the connecting flights in, and you would think that you wouldn't begin to realize who is going to RuneFest. But as soon as that plane left from Amsterdam into Birmingham, it was clear, and it was very clear just walking around the area as well. And that was a bit of a shock to me with 3,000 people.
Yeah, exactly. So no, all good. You definitely notice people like even in this hotel. I'm staying here in a hotel right across the convention center, and I think most times I've took the elevator or lift here, I've been with other people attending RuneFest. So yeah.
Well, with that, we've been talking a bit about what the initial venue was like and how the event got underway. And of course, what people might not be aware of is that, when you watch RuneFest at home, you're watching for the talks, you're watching for the keynotes and the expanding keynotes that are happening tomorrow. Interesting to note, and you'll hear this at the top of the show. This was recorded on the Saturday. So we're just going based off of the top keynotes here. And if there's any tidbits that come out from the other ones, we'll patch that in as we move through the weeks here. But RuneFest itself, if you're here, isn't necessarily always going to be about the talks. It's primarily about the floor experience, I'd say.
Yeah, it's to be honest, like this has always been a complaint of mine with RuneFest, is that you want to go to the talks, you want to like see all of the content that's being announced, but at the same time, if most of them are recorded, and you kind of want to take in the atmosphere, do the activities and all of that. So it's always a little bit of a choice you have to make. I think this time
we were pressed for time as it is, only going to the 2 reveal talk.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, most people have both days. We are otherwise busy tomorrow.
Yeah, and of course, what he means by otherwise busy is the community marketplace.
Yeah, exactly.
For clans and clan quests plus the podcast.
Exactly.
That's form of media there. with that. So keeping all that in mind, it was basically do the skill chip activities,
Yeah.
roam around, talk to people, and then when it was time, go and watch both reveals discussions back to back.
Yeah,
On
it's in that sense, I think it's a great thing that they did at the second day, though. Based on the queues, I think a lot of people felt the need to finish like the skill chips and all of their activities today.
Yeah, and that's that can be fairly central to most conventions in terms of long lineups like that and whatnot. So it is something that comes with the territory. And one of the things that did come back this year that goes directly into that floor experience is the skill chips. And this was not present at the RuneFest that I was at, but you have had skill chips for most of your RuneFests, and the general sentiment of this and what happens with it is you go around the floor and you complete various tasks or various activities to get a set of commemorative chips.
Yeah, I feel this is like, I mean, I don't go to a lot of cons. I mean, I'm I'm very very loyal to RuneScape, but I think it's a very unique feature about RuneFest, where they basically set out different activities you can do, and you get like a reward for them. If you complete all of them, you get a special ninth coveted skill chip. You can buy like nice display boxes to get them at home. I have all of the ones from the
So this was completing the collection for you.
This is completing the collection for me. So now I have 3 of them, and I'm gonna keep doing them as long as RuneFests keep happening. But yeah, they're basically like poker chips,
Yeah.
like custom prints, and it's a really nice memorabilia.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And yeah, so, and I don't know, it's, you do get to interact with some people in the queue. You do get to do some fun things.
Yeah, and see that also goes into the thing that I've said about RuneFest before, is that it's one RuneScape community at RuneFest. You don't care if somebody's an old school player or an RS3 player, and you would just interact with them on the day for what it was. And they did something very, very smart with one of the skill chip tasks here. One of the things that came in the backpack was a set of trading cards, and to get one of your skill chips, you had to complete a set of 4 trading cards. So you might have to collect 4 gems, 4 fish, 4 types of wood from wood cutting, or 4 types of ore.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily going to have all these when you open up your pack, when you open up your backpack. And I realize that's a lot of opening of sacks, but if you dig deep enough in the sack,
Yeah.
you'll see that this was a good social endeavor for getting the community
To actually,
to interact with each other,
to get 3,000 antisocial people to actually talk to each other.
And see, that's the thing. We say that, and the fun part of it is we were waiting for the first talk to get underway. We were talking with the people around us. We were having people come up to us, figuring out what we need. You even went as far to use your phone and put on big letters.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of people, you know, like if you think about it, back in the day, World 2, going to like the Grand Exchange or like Farrock Square, I think it was.
Yeah.
Honestly, just
Want to buy Mithril ore.
Yeah, exactly. So there were lots of people with like yellow or black, just asking for certain things. I think it created a really nice moment of bonding between the entire community right from the get-go. And like what I really loved as well is there were some people like also trading if it didn't necessarily immediately benefit them. So like a lot of people were very helpful. And there were also people around like, hey, you know, do you have this? And when you said yes, or like, oh, like calling other people over, like everybody was really helping each other. So that was an absolutely lovely experience. So whoever came up with the trading card concept at Jagex, it might have been a shared idea between multiple of you, but you did absolutely great. I think it was one of the highlights of the day.
Yeah. And as the day went on, if you weren't able to complete your set, they had JMods appearing around the Grand Exchange with sets of cards that they would just trade for whatever you needed, and there was a chance that they would have the appropriate card.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there was that, and another thing central to RS is penguin hunting.
Yes, so this is the old time class. I think your year when
I
you
don't
visited
think we had
RuneFest
that
didn't
there
have
in
that, but
2018. No.
it's a traditional activity where they hide eight penguins around the venue with like letters around their neck, and you need to find them all, create a word out of it,
And then you get a skill chip from
then you get a skill chip for that. It's absolutely lovely. It's one of my favorite activities as well. It's a lot of fun seeing people searching around.
the word of the year was Godsword.
Yeah. Oh, you're giving it away now. You're revealing this before the end of RuneFest. Everyone. But yeah, no, lots of fun. Do you want to talk about some of the other activities quickly?
Yeah, we can do that. I think one thing we decided on that the most novel one was pie ingredient tasting.
Oh, yes.
But it wasn't actual ingredients. It was
No.
flavored mist.
Yes.
Which, I mean, there was lots of other mist floating around from the various fog machines during the day, but
Yeah.
this was one that took the longest to wait for, but was probably, I think, the most interesting one, just in terms of being a unique thing.
Yeah. With the skill chip challenges, there's always throughput problems when some of the activities take a lot longer. So this one took quite long for us to wait for. We have used some dishonest way to acquire one of the skill chips. I think we can say that.
Yeah, it was the Varrock Bank heist. So what would you do? What skill would you use for that?
Thieving.
There you go.
So instead of thieving from the heist, we looked at a nearby guard and just pickpocketed them. And you had some bad luck with being stunned.
Yeah, I did. Then I tapped the guard on the head, and he fell over dead once I got it.
Yeah, that's also a way to get it. So no, that was a lot of fun. The paper craft you mentioned, so it was like a wise old man paper craft that you had to assemble.
With instructions, so you weren't putting together a puzzle.
No, exactly. So that was quite fun, a bit finicky, but
Yeah.
that was pretty interesting. We did some cabbage shooting. Had to try and hit targets.
Mine went over the wall.
Well, impressive. I got 3 really close shots, but after 3 shots, they just usher you out to keep the food
And you
behind.
get the chip.
Yeah, you get a chip anyway. And of course, Cook's assistant too.
Yeah, with the eggs that were thankfully fake.
Thankfully.
Well, you've seen how expensive eggs are.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Well, that's probably more of an American thing.
Yeah,
than Europe.
It is. Oh boy, we're gonna go to the supermarket in a few days, and you're gonna be surprised at a lot of things, like how we don't refrigerate our eggs. Okay, he's pulling a face right now, so I think it's time to move on to the next point.
Indeed, it is, and that kind of leads to one of the things that was absent this year is there was no central theme for the RuneFest, but.
Well, the community was the central theme. If you read the book,
which makes sense after 5 years, almost 6 years of being absent, right?
Exactly. So this was also the 10th RuneFest. Was actually an anniversary. I don't think it was celebrated too highly, but that's 15 years of RuneFests, I believe.
Wow.
I think the first one was 2010.
Yeah, and they started so small with that it was only a few hundred people. And they didn't know if it was going to be successful, and they actually refunded everybody's tickets.
Oh, yes, that's a fun story. Yes, I wish my ticket was refunded. They were not cheap.
Yeah, and see, I think in addition to that, just celebrating the community, but also the fact this is probably the first RuneFest that you have an equal footing or more than equal footing for both ours.
I, again, through the grapevines, I have so many contacts. About 1/3 of the players were RS3 of the attendees. And
really? I didn't hear that one.
2/3 old school. Yeah, roughly that distribution, which I think if you look at sort of the how busy it was at the 2 talks, sort of adds up. That
makes sense. That makes sense in that regard. And
if you look
at the player numbers, that kind of all adds itself up too.
I mean, I think old school is underrepresented if you look at exact daily player numbers.
Yeah.
But we didn't see any. We saw maybe 1 bot, but on stage at some point. But there were no bots. So I guess maybe it adds up this way.
Right. And with that, I think that I need to figure out how to read my own handwriting here on my old-fashioned show notes. Yeah, okay. The event was pretty overall well balanced in terms of how they use the floor space.
Yeah, I look, 3,000 people in a small space. Lots of jokes are being made on Reddit about this. I think it was fine, honestly. I've been to Gamescom before, for example, and I know about other cons. Sometimes you can't even set a foot, like you said, a step. You're just surrounded by people and crowds, and that was absolutely not the case here. It was actually quite, there was a lot of walking room, briefing room. There was a lot of seating space. Like whenever we felt like we wanted to sit down,
Yeah, it wasn't hard to find.
it never took us long to find a place to sit down. So all in all, I think it was a good balance of the space. At the same time, like I said before, Farnborough, the first year definitely felt very empty
Okay.
and desolate to me, and that was not the case here. There were always people around as well. So
and tons of JMOds just walking around too, not necessarily running, the skill chip stations or preparing for their talks or whatever. Literally, you could just walk up to certain people and have conversations with them about whatever is going on at the event.
yeah, we're still not getting Elemental Workshop next
No,
sequel.
yeah,
Unfortunately,
we tried that.
Unfortunately, the mod responsible for that was one of the few not present this time around. So, we'll keep campaigning for that for all of you.
Which I know we have the fans of that. I know we definitely have the people who aren't a fan of the Elemental
Yeah.
Workshop stuff.
So yeah, but like this is your second RuneFest. So before we move on to the reveals, what do you think? I mean, you had to travel quite far for
Yeah.
this. Do you regret it?
No, no, I don't. I don't think you would ever do that because it's all in the experience, right?
What would you say to people that would have to travel to convince them to try and get tickets next time?
I would say that if you are in the UK or if you're in continental Europe and you play RuneScape, it's definitely something you should consider and you should try and come to if you have the chance to. If you are from a further part of the world, see what it's, see if you're able to work anything else into it. See if you're able, to find any deals on flights or points or what have you on that sort of thing. And if you have the opportunity to do it, make it happen because I know there are people who went to 2019 and were planning on going to 2020 or maybe miss 2019 and then we're just in the dark here for 5 years due to the world situation, and that is what ultimately governed my decision here with 2025.
Yeah.
And I think that should probably be the case for a lot of people thinking about this going forward. And we have to look at where this event was hosted and what else was going to be here in September, right? With Insomnia and how that went belly up.
Yeah.
And in general, it's becoming more difficult to host these sort of large conventions like this because they don't make a profit in most cases.
It's also it's from what I've heard. This is not something I've heard confirmed about this event specifically, but I know in general, like things like festivals suffer the same problem. Is that a lot of insurances have taken out things like pandemics out of their things that they reimburse for, so it's becoming incredibly hard to cover all the financial risk to things like insurance. Because insurance companies have seen what happened in 2020 and they're not really keen for a repeat.
Yeah.
So the financial risk has to be distributed differently, and a lot of companies can't carry that risk.
Yeah, and with that, you start to wonder, and you see what other kind of conventions out there might go away from this, and it. I think based on what the reaction this year and what we had, I think they'll try and do one next year if they can, probably.
I was sort of worried that this might be the last one.
Yeah,
After
me too.
seeing today, I have my doubts. I think they will try and do one again yearly.
And you could just tell that from the mods who are here that this is a corporate and personal morale booster for everybody involved.
Yeah.
As difficult as the setup and putting it on might be.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds very cheesy what Mark said in the opening that all of you have been able to see on stream by now, I think. Because like all of these people that have just raised their hands, they're just friends you haven't made yet.
Yes.
Which it sounds incredibly cheesy, but that is how it ends up being. we don't have the power of hindsight of the Sunday, which is the community day yet, which I think will only reinforce this. But from what I've seen so far, I think, yeah, I don't know. I can't describe it, right? Like I knew ahead of time that I really wanted to go to RuneFest, and I wanted to mostly go to see the other people that I play with. But there's something about the energy, something about the atmosphere that just changes the way you perceive a lot of things, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And, I go back to the classic discussion from 2018 that we are one RuneScape community when it comes to things like RuneFest. And a lot of people in the online world don't remember that and don't see it that way, but
I
that's
think
precisely how it is at RuneFest.
Yeah, I think back in 2018, I think the split was harder and a little bit more problematic. I would like to think that we are on a point where there's a little bit more cross-pollination going on. There's a little bit more cross-communication going on. I think we're in a much better position, but yeah, like events like these strengthen the fact that we do all have one thing in common, as well.
And that's RuneScape, which we're going to now go to. If you're listening on the RS3 side, the RuneScape Ahead reveals, and on the old school side, the RuneFest Summit, the first one that they've done on that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's dig straight into it.
I think the one thing that we both came to this RuneFest wanting was an opportunity to get our hands on sailing.
Yes.
And we did that. They had in the LAN area set up an option where you could play test an alpha build of sailing. And for folks unaware of what that means, it's not feature complete. There's bugs. There's polishing that needs to be done. And it's a general sense to get a feel of what we've called the core loop of the skill.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be almost exactly the same build as the rest of the players are going to actually get their hands on
in about 3 weeks,
somewhere in March, so somewhere in the next 4 weeks or so, for sure. Yeah, no, it was exciting. I think in total, I played about an hour. I think in total.
I think I played probably about 40-ish minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we got our hands on, the intro quest, as well as some of the core.
You went to all the core aspects of it.
I went through all the core aspects of it. The alpha was actually set up pretty nicely. It took me a while to figure out how it was set up, but there's like a little separate interface that sort of shows the core aspects. So for each of the aspects has a few tasks. So it's almost an achievement diary, Shane. I know you love those. So
and collection and some collection logs of stuff too. I know that's something we've talked about before, and in some ways it almost feels like they're maybe taking a bit from archaeology on RS3 on that in terms of how that's set up. Maybe.
No, I felt it was a very different depth.
It's a different vibe.
Yeah, very different vibe. But yeah, no, look, it for those people when they get access to the alpha in hopefully not too long, definitely recommend going to that particular interface, and then just going to all the tasks in there and doing them one by one. Because I think that will give you the best.
That gives you the best picture.
Yeah, especially like we had to split a session in two because we went there early on in the day. It was quite busy. We only had a short time to actually engage with it, and we ran into a lot of technical issues. Funnily enough, one of the worlds was broken and ships could only go in a straight line, which was hilarious because there was just a row of people trying to get away. So that was interesting, for sure. But so it took us most of the session to actually get to the technical problems, and we really didn't get much in terms of playing.
I was able to get the tutorial done in the first go.
Yeah, I did part of the tutorial and I realized doing a quest is not the best use of my time, and I tried doing some of the tasks, but even then, sort of got stuck, and that was all the time we had. And then later we got back, spent a little bit more time. I went a little bit more in depth in the different mechanics. You tried some of the charting.
Yeah, the charting, which was a fun mechanic. I don't know how novel it is over time, or if it gets old, or how it feels interaction-wise. And again, none of that matters now because it's an alpha, and all of that is subject to change.
I think the charting to me, it feels in part it is the game, the core game loop, I think, but at the same time, it's also the thing that of all of it, and people might find it interesting, is the thing that needs the most polish. There's a whole bunch about the movement and the mechanics and some of the readability of that I think needs clarification. So for example, during the charting, one of the main things you do is you go around, you go to a certain spot, and you either like click like a shipwreck, or you click your telescope thingy to look at a certain thing, or the current duck. I don't think you tried out the current duck.
No, I didn't.
The current duck is interesting. Basically, you release your current duck, and it starts moving by itself, following the currents, and you need to follow it, chase it up, and recollect it before you get that entry. So there's a little bit, it's almost like a little mini game. That's for a very loaded term, talking about sailing, the word mini game.
Especially after the Forster stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But like it's I think it does its job. I think it's interesting. So that's sort of what it looks like. But during
we'll
that,
go into each point of the alpha when it goes public later this
yeah, exactly.
but the main thing I wanted, okay,
just to finish my point, like one of the main things I have with readability is like you click one of these things, you interact with them, you let go of the helm, and then I tried moving the ship again, but I couldn't because I first had to click on the helm, and like there's a few, you know, things that just take me out of the flow, like. But I do think that with polish you can get there. Like another thing is you can click things in the ocean without being right next to it, because that doesn't really work with ships.
Right.
But the interaction range is really unclear. So, I mean, we had an interesting chat with one of the mods working on it. I didn't catch his name, unfortunately. So if you're listening, thank you. But we talked about it, and like that's some of the things that we'll take on board. So making it clearer what can be interacted
like when you're
with.
interacting with the helm.
Exactly. So I think that's good, for sure. But yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. And you know, it all culminates in the discussion of what needs to do to pass the next hurdle. And the one thing I was looking for coming into this was that it stops being the meme skill.
Yeah.
And it proves itself as being something that's viable to be added to the game.
Yeah, it's in terms of execution, like the movement. I mean, I never had major doubts about execution.
Right.
Right. I did think that given the skill, they were going to execute and make it the very best they could. That's what that's what I've said from day one. I just playing through this, I think that was confirmed. Right? They confirmed that they are very capable, smart, intelligent people, that build something that is worth playing, that is interesting to interact with. And if we can extrapolate this all the way throughout an entire skill, I think it will overall not be the worst skill that exists on launch, which, you know, low bar crafting. But I still am not convinced, and I didn't expect to be convinced of this, that it's the right skill, right? Like, I think with the same time, if they had been invested in shamanism or maybe even taming, we would have gotten a better product overall, because the starting point would have been better.
Yeah, and the question that follows from that is what's the point of sailing, and what is the entire idea behind it in you know, like a paragraph brief.
They couldn't give that to us when we asked. I don't know if I can give it. And I think so. We all asked to fill in a survey. I don't know how much I should review about the survey. I don't want to poison the well when people get sent the same survey later. But it does open up a discussion about, does it feel like a mini game? Why does it feel like a mini game? And should it be released as a skill? I think, for example, the part that, to my surprise, I enjoy most was the Barracuda trial they had in there.
Which we weren't anticipating that.
No, it was one of the. It was always the part of the news post.
It's like agility for boats, right?
Yeah.
It's like agility for boats.
It's like agility for boat. Yeah, a little bit. You need to sort of start making use of the movement mechanics. Go to like currents where you move faster, pick up things, and try and within a time limit, like complete a certain like obstacle
And,
course.
and that's a high intensive min-max optimization way of playing sailing.
It's not. I wouldn't say like the nice thing is yes, but it doesn't really like it's not clicks per second level. Like,
Yeah,
you don't have to
no,
be
it's
tick.
not. It's not metronome.
Maybe you have to be tick perfect. I don't expect you to be tick perfect because the system doesn't seem to be built around tick perfection, which I think is good. So that to me is fun. If that was in the game as a mini game, as a training method for an existing method, we'll love it, right? Like as fun. The core game loop of sailing, I think the best way to put it, again, it's muddled, right? The fact that there are 7 core aspects that you need to engage with, and none of them seems to be the primary core game loop, I think models the quest
And
the skill matter a lot.
and after the skill, like I said, proves itself that it isn't the meme, which they would have definitely got to that point. Anyways, on that, you then start to ask, what is, if you're to pick a core loop, what is it, or do you have 4 of them?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's a tough one. I most of the time, I mean, I can reveal this. We just came out of recording RS3, the reveals, and I think our main message there was like, all of the concepts here are great. It's all going to come down to execution. Here it's the other way around, right? I knew that the execution was going to be good. I just think the core idea is, I mean, fundamentally flawed is a big word, but flawed is definitely a word I would use for it, and it shows, I think, which is unfortunate. I think they've elevated it to a level where I am no longer actively opposed to the skill as I was previously.
And I think that's a key point, because
Yes.
I'm there too now.
Right? Like I wouldn't say I'm not even indifferent about it, right? I think there will actually be aspects of the skill that I might enjoy. I would still rather have had something else.
Right.
It has not won me over.
But if a poll comes out, we're not going to be voting no.
I'm gonna be honest. Part of me did this maybe in a gaslighty way, but when the survey asked, "Do you want this to be revealed in its current state?" I said disagree, but I did not say strongly disagree.
And see, that's weird. They're asking if the alpha as is, or if they add the polish to the alpha.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if they're gonna do a green light poll. I'm gonna have to do some soul searching. But I think at that point I will probably vote yes. Mostly because in that situation, right? Like, surveys are one thing, polls are another thing. In a survey, I want to talk about, what do I enjoy? Would I enjoy this content? Would I engage with it? If it comes down to skills, I do want old school to get more skills. I want them to start working on shamanism, like the day after sailing comes.
Because if sailing doesn't work,
Exactly. So
you're back a number of years on this, and you might not get a new skill for.
And my question when coming to the poll will be, because if it's going to be a green light poll, all the work is basically already done, right? My question is only going to be, is this going to be actively harmful to the game if it's added today? I don't think so.
Right.
I had my doubts in the beginning. I think some parts of the game might suffer. Like the interaction between land and sea is a little bit funky, and that hasn't really been fixed. At the same time, how much actual playtime in RuneScape, besides when you're fishing, do you really spend in open view of the oceans, right? Not that much.
Right.
So actively harmful to the game, I don't think so. There's parts of it I enjoy. I will accept it, and will maybe even over time learn to enjoy it and embrace it as part of the game. We need to be willing to accept change, and even if it's not necessarily entirely aligned with what we want.
Even if you could say that it's not change we believe in.
Yeah, sure, yes.
You know where that's
yeah,
from, right?
it rings a bell, but
Obama 2008.
there you go. So yeah, no, that's it. Am I a sailing convert? No. Am I a sailing endurer at this point? That's for sure. And like I said, I did like the trials. I do think the trials will get old quickly. I do think the charting needs a whole bunch of quality of life It's hard to find the locations. The locations remain active afterwards, so it's really unclear, like from just engaging with the game world, which ones you have interacted with or not. And I think one of the things feedback we gave to the JMods, and I think probably my biggest point right now is, one of the main features of an ocean is that it's largely empty and devoid of features.
And the question with that, how do you navigate?
And how do you navigate, right? I went the wrong way multiple times.
And maybe that's part of the skill.
Maybe it's part of the skill, or maybe you get used to it. Maybe you start recognizing new landmarks because, of course, we're so used to how the game world looks. I probably when I went to Corinth for the first time, I got lost a few times as well. So maybe it's the same. At the same time, I do hope that they find a good way to, bring up landmarks and to make it really clear where you're going. But yeah, I think, there's a certain amount of jank, and I do think that the polish will help. And the fact that they announced the skill to be released by the end of this year,
that I was not expecting.
I was not expecting that either. I am honestly expecting that to slip, but also a whole year of polish on top of the product we have today, because I think movement worked. I mean, we got stuck a few times.
Yeah.
And it's maybe not always
based,
but yeah. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
No, it's fine. The way I see it going is that if what we saw at RuneFest and what the people get in a couple weeks' time, if that is largely well received, I think then it goes into the phase where we say these are the features and this is how the skill is going to be. Then at this point, it's a matter of refining it, polishing it, XP rates, and the whole thing that brings it from what we're really just playing as a sample to something that is going to be playable by the masses.
Yeah, I think one thing, and I was telling you that on the way out, is that right now I've really played to samples and different bits of it. I was really jumping around to different pieces of content. One thing I will do when the alpha comes out, I will go back on my old account, I'm going to be curious to see if my progress has been saved actually between the beta account we made now and the alpha account.
I don't know that it would be,
but we'll see. But I want to go reset to level 1 and really just, instead of using the in-game abilities to level up my sailing and level down my sailing depending on the content, try and get a sense of the actual training. What does the training
like the entire thing
from the entire thing from level 1 to like 30, which is where the first trial takes place? That sounds like a good, maybe like a couple of hours of playtime, and just get a sense of what actually training it looks like. What is the different XP rate between salvaging, which is the AFK training method, the port tasks, which is more active, and then the trials.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary of it, and maybe all the different tasks or the slider of where we go in terms of activity on that.
But do go and train your construction because you'll need it. That's the one tip I'll have to people. If you want the very best ships, you're going to need your construction level. And if you're an Iron Man, you're going to need the construction materials as well.
Oh, that's going to be tough.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be fine. It's mostly logs and planks and some basic stuff that you would also expect. But the integration with construction is there. Which you didn't get to engage with. No. It's actually kind of fun. You sort of go to an instance with your ship, and there you get to sort of work on
customizing it.
It has like the hotspot like you would have via POH, so you get to like add, which is interesting. Like you get to choose between like, do I want like a salvaging hook or a cannon on my ship? I think the one feature that I was still missing that I will request for right now is I want to be able to name my ships, because my ships are boat 1 and boat 2, and I want to.
Of course, that'll probably be there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, all in all, net positive experience.
I would agree with that, and I am not in the phase where I will actively try and prevent it from coming to the game. So I think that's what I want my stance on this to be. We got this thing called Yama. What in the heck is this?
You don't notice?
No.
Oh, you didn't take current in your last. I spent a lot of time. Yama is and it's a demon, likes contracts.
Okay.
So there's a rift in the Shazian area where you can go down. You can fight various demons. It's a slay
Okay.
dungeon. Wait,
Yeah, I've been in there. I've done some
yeah,
demons.
yeah. Which
So this is presumably at the bottom of it then?
yeah. So there's a voice of Yama is at the bottom. You can talk to that you can talk to, but that's not Yama himself, I guess. So this brings Yama as an actual boss in there, which I think is fun. It's thematic. More uses for all the demon bane weaponry we've gotten, probably.
Interesting. I guess that all adds up at the end of the day, doesn't it?
It kind of does. Another duo boss.
I guess I don't know that we're at the point for that.
No, our accounts probably need a little bit more
What did they say? This was the one they said 110, right?
No, that was the very last review we're gonna talk about.
Okay, the last
Yeah. No, there was no combat requirements here, but it's gotta be end game. Yeah, I mean, starved is a big word. We haven't gotten any end game content anytime recently.
Which has become very apparent in what you guys have told us in the comments as well. And I think that, and I think this set of reveals has acted upon that and provided it.
I don't think we got a lot of information, but it's not content that's necessarily aimed at me. Yama is going to be a little bit too high level for me, but I do like duo content. I think we had a lot of fun actually with the Way of Titans.
We did.
So I could definitely see, it's actually not that hard. It's not that hard to find a friend to play with or even a random to play with compared to.
And I think that's shown that for a lot of people too when it comes to what we had in the Royal Titan boss set.
Yeah.
But Varlamore Part 3 is also on the way.
More high level content.
A little bit later than we were expecting. I think we were anticipating April, May on this.
That's what they announced at the Winter Summit, or Summer Summit, rather.
This is now slipped to the This is now slipped to the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly not terribly surprised, given that we were still having discussions about some of the rewards, polls being delayed upon delayed upon delayed. But yeah, the Delph boss is going to come soon, which is going to be very different. Yama has the contract system. Which of course is like, it felt a little bit like there's going to be invocations in terms of a mascot, but for a single boss. So it's going to be, to me, it seems like a very different take on sort of an enrage-like mechanic.
And when you get there, that's different than how RS3 has done Enrage, and I think it's maybe a more interesting way of going about it, because what you end up having instead with this is you have a system where you're able to pick and choose how hard you like it, rather than just being a straight up climber.
Yeah, no, this is one of the things I really appreciate about Tombs of a Mascot, right? Yeah, like you have 5 bosses in total, 4 sub bosses in the final, and if you're like, oh, I always struggle with Sabak, but oh my god, all of the names suddenly just completely slipped from my mind.
Well, I mean that's okay, because I'm trying to decipher what my handwritten show notes here say.
Yeah, no, but like if you look at Acri is fine, but Sabak is like, I'm easy peasy, or is really hard that you can sort of make choices there. So yeah, this is gonna be similar, right? Like if you're like, oh, I don't mind dealing with movement, but I really I suck at prayer switches, or I don't know, you can sort of mix and match, which is interesting, but we'll see how the exact implementation is. I think it's interesting.
And I think one of the things, again, this will be outside my realm of combat level, but the question is, if you combine mechanics plus rewards and what we've been learning with the learning PVM bosses over the last year and a bit, does that put somebody like myself on the road who can eventually get to one of these Delph bosses one day somehow if I wanted to?
Very curious to see. We'll find out, I guess.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
That's going to be something for the both of us.
Yeah, I like the idea of one thing to announce is that the arena, some of the effects on the arena sort of carry forward. So I could see, like, I don't know if it's going to be Venom, but let's say like this Venom pulse that just don't go away. So if you do your previous phases better,
You're not going to have that.
You might make your later things easier. It's the same as the Inferno, right? You have the Nibblers who take away your safe spots if you leave them alive for too long. Killing them quickly and making sure you maintain your safe spots, that's really important. So, there's definitely trends in where PVM is going, with like choosing your difficulty. The Colosseum has that, Tombs of a Mascot has that. But also sort of, some of these sort of progressive things. And I think it's all good.
Yeah. Also in part 3, we have the addition of the crabs that they were talking about. Specifically
the gem crabs.
Crabs.
Yeah. Look, crabs are traditionally very AFK. This sounds less AFK, but might be interesting. Might even be more engaging now. Because let's be honest, almost all AFK training is AFK to some level, except for if you do bosses, PVM.
Yeah. And I think the 2 interesting things that come of this is that, one, we're dealing with gems, which we said might be a source of supplementary crafting XP on the side, I think.
Yeah, at least for Iron Man.
Could
might
be,
be,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is that if you have a higher level agility, you're going to be more adept at getting to the path. You need to be doing more damage to the boss, which increases the amount of XP that you get.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really like, to me, right now your options for combat trainings are really like full AFK, no danger, or fully like front of your seat doing PVM. And I feel nothing really in between. This feels like the option where you can be active, but you're not really taking on a lot of risk.
Yeah, and
right, like
see, that's the thing. You don't necessarily want to do that for just basic combat training.
Exactly. Yeah. So this, I think, is really, I think it's a cool mix. Like I could see myself being like, I kind of really want more combat training levels, and I could be doing Slayer, but that's a little bit mind dead. This is like, I really want to focus on combat XP. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good idea.
And I think as well with this, it really rounds out what is going to be in Varlamore Part 3, because we have the quest that's going to be associated with that. We have
Twilight Emissary quest line. Yeah,
we have another set of quests that don't take themselves too seriously. I don't know if we're gonna catch up with Ribboning Tales level.
I think Lord Cuthbert is gonna return and will be revived for the 3rd time.
Oh, we love those quests that come with Varlamore.
Yeah, I mean they're not always necessarily super quirky. Death on the Isle was a little bit more serious, I think, but still,
and a good way of doing different way of doing murder mystery.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the quests for this part as well.
Anything else in Varlamore Part 3?
Slayer monsters,
yeah, Slayer monsters.
The fetching activity is of course a big deal. You
were lukewarm about that when that was announced. How are you feeling now?
If you still feel the same.
Okay, because everything that was announced up to this point, we knew to a degree.
Oh yes, yeah.
The summer sweep up.
I mean, I'm a massive fan of game integrity updates. Give them to me every month. Well, maybe not every month, every other month. I'll be happy.
This includes more magic elemental weaknesses,
which I think is good. When they said more combat variety, I was hoping they would start looking at the other styles and maybe differentiating the range. Like we now have 3 different range
in terms
styles,
of how that would work,
and like maybe giving monsters more differentiation, which might have invalidated some existing strategies, which I know is a touchy topic, but like some differentiation there would have been more interesting than rolling out elemental weakness more broadly, I think. But still happy with it, I guess. It would be interesting to see if they're gonna do some more original things. But all in all, can't hurt. I think elemental weakness is a great mechanic that doesn't give enough credit.
Yeah, absolutely. It has changed the way that we see the normal spell book, and
it has changed Slayer for me a lot. Like Dragon Tasks are a completely different beast. Deep Black Demons, completely different. Fire Giants. All of these tasks, just the strategy of doing those has completely changed.
And I think that's good on the whole. Anything else on the sweep up?
I mean, Blood Runes was hilarious. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw that coming from
And I
miles
think
away, but
people are going to be okay with that.
yeah, I think yeah, like these are the kind of things we really want to see. But yeah, Summer Sweep Up, absolutely love it. Love integrity updates as a whole. So
And the key aspect of this is that they went into a few of them here at the conference, and I don't think that this was meant to be the big shiny object in the room here, and we'll get there because other things that uh, they talked about were the things that have just been running on the parallel to the content development aspect of it, including more work on the new client, which feels like it's in the same spot it was before. Beta's on the way for it in SD mode, and then they need to figure out where HD lands after that.
yeah, I mean, they didn't do a particularly good job, I think, at describing this. I know it's very exciting, but I think, and I can sort of imagine how much of work things like performance and optimization are. It really is tough, especially on the old tech and the variety of tech this is running on. And I don't think they did a really good job at explaining how difficult that is, which
And I think the part of the thing that showed why they need to get this right is that there was the entire discussion about all the various places in the world that people have been playing old school. Up on the plane, on a cruise ship.
yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm still excited for it. I have more frustrations about the mobile client and the RuneLite client, so I do hope that we will get plugins. But when the SD version comes out, I will turn it on my mobile as soon as possible. As long as it doesn't crash my phone, I will beta test the heck out of that. Um, I don't know if I'm necessarily like I don't know about you, but for me, the HD feature is really not important. I've never really had any problem with how the game looks.
It's something I want.
Yeah, it's something you care a little bit more about the graphical fidelity, I think. I
Yeah.
don't really care, but I do care about the plugin ecosystem, and I do expect we will see that.
Which is
for
going to
the
be
game.
huge getting plugins on mobile because
Yeah, like Quest Helper.
they have to do it in a way that is approved by the app stores, allowing third-party content to be run on these apps that are approved by the App Store isn't necessarily something that is a simple task.
Yeah, there's gonna be complications there. I mean, this is gonna be a worry, right? Like, if they are they going to manually approve all of the plugins, that might be the case. And I think, how are you gonna get the same for like there's plugins for everything in Moonlight almost. You can, uh, this is a minor spoiler, but there's a plugin to literally revive Neve after Monkey Madness 2 and put it back in place, right? Like this plugins for bloody everything.
And see, that's the thing, is how granular do you get with that, and when do those make their way in? And this leads into something that wasn't said, but we're in a world potentially with this where with this SD update and the plugins, they're moving to a path where they can eventually turn off the Java client.
Look, that's going to be, I'm pretty sure that is their long-term goal. If I were in charge of them, I would absolutely hate the fact that I'm maintaining two clients and two code bases. So, I will, I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I am like 99% sure that that's one of the considerations, which is unfortunate, but, tech stacks do need to just be replaced at some point in their life cycle, and we are way past due date on Java client. So we'll see about that. I mean, if the plugin system becomes good enough, just the fact that my plugin settings will be the same, like things like load tracker, if they synchronize data between my client and my mobile phone, all of a sudden it becomes in my own interest to start using the official client.
And that goes into something about the data they said is that they're going to be able to provide way better data to these plugins that
Yeah, I'm just hoping that there will be some kind of API to share this data between my phone and my client. Like, for example, menu energy swapper, I have to, on my iPad, reset all of the settings that are on my mobile phone. It's local storage. I do not think that the loot tracker, even the one in the official client, is shared between my different devices. Right? Like a lot of these things so don't track altogether, which in RuneLite is the case as long as you're logged in with a RuneLite account. It will even track all of your settings. How that's going to work is, I think, a big factor in how successful the plugin API is going to be.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're a long way down the road on this before this becomes an issue.
Yes.
So, moving on from there, an update on Project Zenaris.
Again, that's another thing that I feel is in the same place as it was when we last got the update, right? But I do think
it was important to show people how it could work.
Exactly.
But beyond that,
yeah,
really the same spot.
I do think it's interesting that they showed how it could work. I do think it showed that it works very well for content creation. I don't know how an average player will engage with it. Though I could see, people developing these challenges, and if they become like big on Reddit and people can have like leaderboards and all of the
traffic, and people buy the Zenaris package tier, I guess, that lets them create content with it, because we assume that there's going
to be some level of monetization for sure. We just don't know how it works yet. But yeah, it's interesting how that goes. I still don't know if I care about it a lot. I accidentally convinced you a little bit last time we talked about Project Zenaris, I think. Has your opinion changed again?
Oh boy. I'm going to say no. I think we're at the exact same spot we were last time with this, where it is a content creation tool, and I don't know if that's enough for the regular player base to justify it.
Yeah.
But if it allows more content creation, brings money and pays the bills, then there's your justification for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's get to some content that we weren't aware of.
Yeah, we had to end on a surprise. Well, there were two surprises, I guess. But yeah.
The Grandmaster finale of the Vampire Myreki storyline, the Blood Moon Rises, coming out next year. Grandmaster Quest, they say you probably want level 110 combat for.
Yeah, I mean it's the same with Desert Treasure too, right? So we'll be fine.
And the aspect about this is that as this was being explained in the keynote, Mod Ed had to stop the talk because somebody was cheering that the Myreki were going to be dead.
Yeah, I don't think that talk went entirely according to plan to Mod Ed. He went off script quite a lot, but no, this is a rough one for us because we are actually in the midst of actually starting on playing through the Vampire Quest, so I mean, spoilers, the Myreki are dead, like, thanks, we didn't know that. I mean, I had scanned a little bit through the quest guides, but the fact that this happened had sort of not been fine. I'll accept it, I'll allow it. But no, I think it's hard for me to be fully excited about it without sort of knowing where the cliffhanger of the previous quest ends. But I do not think that RS3 got a satisfying end to their Vampire quest line. That sort of didn't end in the climax that it deserved, and I'm very keen to see how a different take on it would look. I liked that it was a surprise announcement. I think it's not entirely a surprise. I think people were talking about this.
I mean, if it wasn't going to be one of the Majrat Grandmaster ones that follows from While Yahtzee Sleeps and Secrets of the North and what have you, it was going to be this one.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then that leads us to the other surprise, which, in the prediction and betting spaces on this one, I feel like it was obvious. A new raid.
I can't believe that I am excited about that. Yeah. I mean,
again, very vague. It's a long ways away, so we don't necessarily know.
Again, I think
the deal is with this.
Yeah, I do think it's good that people get this perspective, especially since, you know, we did see that people were looking for more end game PVM content. So knowing that this is being worked on, I think is important to just give them that perspective.
Because we got 1, 2, 3, 4 if you count the Myrek.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, but also I've seen, like, if I look at the different raids, right? You had Chambers of Xeric, Feast of Blood, I admittedly haven't played, though I know a little bit about it. And then there's Tombs of a Mascot. To me, there's a clear upward trend of the quality of the raids. I know all of them probably have their own fans, but I do think that Tombs of a Mascot, in terms of execution and polish and interesting mechanics, is by far the best. Knowing what they have achieved with Colosseum, with some of even the mid-game bosses, the level of polish and level of interesting mechanics they've been able to come up with, it has to become a massive banger, right?
Yeah.
Raids 4 is going to be update of the year before
and see, this is what over the past 2 summits people were looking for, something in the realm of this. And I think by hitting on those marks, you get to a point where that itch is scratched or will be scratched, and it provides a good outline of how you can have this one area. I'm not necessarily talking about raids 4 right now, but if you just take Varlamore, how that starts with the basic content and works its way up to the delve boss, it shows that you create the spectrum of content for the game.
Yeah.
And that if you're in one of those easy to beginner to medium level phases, you get to the high end eventually again. And we're seeing that now.
Yeah. So yeah, no, new raids, I'm very curious. Any guesses on the theme of this new raid?
I honestly could not tell you, both given my experience with raids and the state and time of day it is right now.
Fair enough. I'm hoping for a jungle theme in Varlamore. It feels interesting. The alternative could be a snow one somewhere up north. Might be interesting. Very icy.
Ooh.
Fissant. Oh, that's next. Sorry. But yeah, no, it's super interesting. Good stuff. All in all, because that's sort of all we had, I think. No big surprises besides the Grandmaster reveal of a Grandmaster quest for the Marek. No major surprises, which
I don't think that was a problem based on the reaction of the room.
No, everybody was very excited. I would have liked to hear more new information, even about the existing updates. Like I think the client, the new client updates was, I mean, sorry to say, a bit of a nothing burger. I think because we already knew all of the information. Varlamore Batch 3, same thing. We actually kind of already knew the information. The only real new thing we got was the date. And I understand some of these things are still in development, but that took the excitement.
So this was more of a let's follow through on the vision kind of thing. Right?
It felt like a refresher on a lot of these topics, which I understand given the pull system. They reveal a lot of this information, then they pull it, now it's confirmed, and now all they really need to say is this is on the roadmap. But even looking, which, I mean, looking back at like the summit, right, the last summit we had, where they announced, Varlamore Batch 2, I think we knew most of what was in Varlamore Batch 2 at that point. Though we'd have to go back and look at the timelines. It's a bit fuzzy in my head right now. Which
plays into the community and transparent forward aspect of the game that we know most of what it is by the time it's announced.
Yeah, which I find unfortunate. Like what we talked about on the RuneFest show, like I think the excitement is part of the atmosphere. Like the keynote to me needs to feel like it is fresh, new, and exciting, instead of just reiterating information we already know. Like otherwise, what's the point in going there and listening to it? And that was missing a little bit this time. It was a little bit too much of just repeating the information that's in the blogs, and maybe we're not the audience for the keynote. Maybe there's a lot of people that don't follow along with the news posts and for which much of this was new.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
Uh,
very interesting.
but my hunch would be that people who are into RuneScape enough to join RuneFest probably read most of the news posts. Maybe that's a wrong hypothesis.
Let us know if we're wrong on that.
Yeah,
That could be fun.
yeah, but yeah, no big surprises, which I find unfortunate. And I would have liked, like, even if it wasn't surprises, just a little bit more in depth on what are we gonna get, right? Like what, like instead of just dates, because
Yeah.
dates are not an interesting reveal.
Yeah, that's fair. And maybe this isn't the venue for that. Maybe that's more of a live stream coming up. But at the same time, you don't get a bigger stage than RuneFest.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I don't know. I also get it. They can't really announce big things that aren't pulled yet. That being said, what we have seen is after most of the summits in the past, we have mega polls, right?
3 questions.
This time there were 3 questions, which is not like even the last summit had, Rathmar, Titans, a whole bunch of Valamor batch 3 stuff. Like that wasn't a proper mega poll. I think like at least 10, 11 questions. Here we have 3 questions, which kind of emphasizes how little got brought up, which I don't know. I don't want to undermine them, but like that, I came out of the RS3 one more excited than old school, and I don't play RS3 right now.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think playing the alpha did more to my
Yes, yeah, that's the best way to put that here.
yeah.
It's going to be the Sailing Alpha.
Yeah.
That was the star of this right now here for us.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think we have an exciting year ahead. We do get Valamor batch 3, which for me is the least of the 3, like least exciting of the 3 because of its combat focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, I'm lukewarm about the fletching activity. But it will round out at Aria nicely. But it's a good chunk of content, I think. We have Yama coming up. We have Sailing coming up, which is absolutely huge. And I do think that once we get out of Valamor, we get out of Sailing, that is a good chunk of development capacity taking off by it.
Precisely.
That is, I think, where we can start seeing things like raids again, which are more, I don't know, they're large pieces of content, right? As compared to like XXXXXL pieces of content that we're dealing with right now in Sailing and Valamor. So we'll see. I think that has to do with it as well. And I think as we go and move towards the next summit, which will be the summer summit, I guess.
August, usually? August?
August, September, I do expect we will actually see a whole chunk of interesting surprises starting to come up again.
Yeah. And, now that the Varlamore period is done and that's where you get there and, maybe we'll have a date for projects in ours and then that frees up more resources too.
Well, that's a separate team, and it will probably remain a separate team. So,
I believe that is the end of the prepared remarks. General tone and thoughts closing out here.
Look, the community was very excited. I think I was generally very excited about the content being announced. It just not new and surprising. Good interactions, interested to get my hands on Sailing. All in all, very interesting experience to be at RuneFest as an old school player. I mean, it feels weird to say, but as an old school player, essentially, very different experience in a sense, but also not quite. Right? I had expected
we've had summits.
We went to both of the summits, but I had expected the experience to be very different. But ultimately, it's the same game. It's the same activities. It's the same, and I think it's very much established as, both of them have an equal part in this activity. I just come away from the summit a little bit wanting for more. Like, I think that's more it. Like, I don't dislike what was announced, so it just doesn't itch.
It's just the time where we're at.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that is probably a good place to end it off here. I don't know that there's much else left to say on any of these that we can, just based on what we have. Let us know what your favorites were. Let us know if you agree about any of the aspects of sailing
Or
that we
disagree.
talked about. Disagree would be more interesting on that. Best way to do that, of course, is in the Discord at update.show/Discord. Also in the YouTube comments at youtube.com/at OSRS update. And that's where you get the podcast each and every week if you want it on YouTube to subscribe there. Plus all the usual podcast listening services, Apple, Pocket Cast, Spotify, and more at update.show/subscribe. Anything else from you?
No, that's it for me. I am about ready to fall over and go to bed.
That sounds like a plan. Alrighty then. Well, we'll see you guys maybe next week.
Maybe next week. Depending on jet lag situation and travel and lots of weird things happening around the next weekend.
Well, we'll see you in 1 or 2 weeks' time for another episode of the Old School RuneScape update. See you next week, everyone. Take care.
Bye.